Welcome. And the question today from X3NeckOx3 is: what was the most petty thing an adult did to you when you were younger? Hi, this is Derek. I just put the Drama Llama, Fred, back in his llama pen, so that I can do this quick video for you with some of the stuff that Fred found on Reddit earlier today. Oh boy, let's get ready for some drama. VG's Kinsella answered with: in Cub Scouts, we were doing the Pinewood Derby. I worked really hard on my car, my dad helped, of course. I had already won the first 3 rounds, and before the final round, one of the dads of the other kids picked up my car to hand it to me. It slipped out of his hand, and broke the wheels when it hit the floor. I'm convinced it was not an accident, and he was sabotaging my car so his kid would win. This was over 30 years ago, and I'm still salty about it. Way too many lemons followed up with: one of my packs had to make a rule that only the parent of the scout could touch their car because stuff like this was happening way too often. The Pinewood Derby and the other racing events were meant to build sportsmanship, yet some parents take it way overboard. There's a movie making fun of exactly this called Down and Derby. McBarge Lovin chimed in with: 100%, I didn't witness it, but supposedly a couple dads got into a fistfight outside of one of my Pinewood Derby events as a kid. Also slightly unrelated but funny, every year I hoped I'd win the award for the best looking car. One year I went all in and made the coolest looking red convertible. My dad helped me, but I also did a ton of work myself and it looked really nice. That year though, they announced that they changed the award to be for the best car that a kid made themselves, and gave it to one of the poopiest looking ones. I'm pretty sure it was some sort of consolation for the kids with absent dads. But I felt slighted lol. Hedge Hoggington answered with: I was at an Easter egg hunt when I was around 6. It was in a big park area with lots of rocks. I saw a little chocolate egg foil glisten and ran over to pick it up. As I reached my hand out to pick it up, a man trod on my hand to stop me getting it, then he called his kid over to find it. Fobliviate followed up with: Jesus, this might be the worst one on here, assaulting a child over a candy. SMT503 chimed in with: when I was like 9 or 10, I was rollerblading home from my mom's work, right? And I'm heading down 4th Street, and I find something like $16 on the ground. A 10. A 5. And single. Just laying there on the sidewalk next to some outdoor seating at a cafe. Being the obnoxiously nice kid that I was, I picked it up and kind of look around, wondering if anybody lost their money. That's when the lady in the weird sweater vest comes around the corner. We make eye contact and I tell her I found this money, and she goes, "Huh? Let me see it." And my naive butt is like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. She's a grown-up, she can sort this out." She looks around, hands me the single back, puts her finger to her mouth in a shoe gesture. Then she just F off, never to be seen again. Noodle Boys in America chimed in with: and that's why I always just pocket money like a thieving little snake. Ashley Wren answered with: when I was in like 5th grade, I didn't put a book cover on my math book. It required cutting up a paper bag, something similar. We couldn't really afford the fancy ones, and I just never did it. So my math teacher took away my math book, so I couldn't do homework or follow along in class. Like what the F, who does that to a kid? When my mom found out, she went down to the school and raised hell about interfering with my right to an education or something. The school district was terrified of her until I graduated. Beans on Toast 0507 answered with: had a teacher in kindergarten threaten to expel me because I was sick and didn't show up the day before. She put me on the spot in front of the whole class, telling me not to lie and that she'd call the principal. I cried in front of the whole class, not knowing what to do. Apparently she wanted to win some attendance award and thought confronting a child was a good idea. Like bruh. I was F'in' 5. Still salty on how she got away with it. DMoose275 answered with: my aunt was unpleasant or weird with everyone, but always particularly cold to me. One day when I was about 14, she took me aside and said she'd held a grudge against me because of my name. She had wanted to call her first daughter that name, but my parents had a child first and used it. They had no idea she wanted the name and aren't the kind of people who would have done it on purpose. She said she'd tried really hard, and had just about forgiven me for it. I just remember being baffled by it and then feeling sorry for her for being that spiteful, to be honest. But it palled later in comparison with all the other crazy horrible things she did to her own family. X3 Necox3 followed up with, "Good thing she was only cold to you, but stayed away then." Chickalook chimed in with, "Growing up, my mom's sister absolutely hated me and got her dad to treat me poorly, too. I learned the reason for her behavior and why that side of the family treated me so horribly. My mom got pregnant with me and I was gonna be born the same year as her sister's kid, and she was mad that my mom and I were stealing their spotlight. Edit, I would just like to add I was my mom's second kid, and the first kid was named after my mom's sister." P-Master UK answered with, "When I was young my mom was best friends with one of the neighbors down the street, who also had a boy the same age as me. As a result I played a lot with said boy and was encouraged to be best friends with him. Whenever my mom wasn't around though, his mom was a complete bitch to me. She would come out to where we were playing together and shout at me for some minor trivial thing. If we were both doing something bad, only minorly bad, we were not bad kids, she would blame it all on me and never reprimand her son at all. This was all when I was like 7 to 10 years old, and so I couldn't process it at all and had no idea how to react, and it really got to me. I found out years later she was basically jealous because I was doing much better at school than her son, and she wanted to take me down a peg. Ultimately the son and I ended up going to different secondary schools and drifted apart. Which meant that fortunately I stopped having to interact with her. Our mums are still good friends and she has always been pleasant to me as an adult. She even did the flowers at my wedding. But even 30 years later I still keep her at arm's length because of how unfairly she treated me as a child." X3 Necox3 answered with, "My parents were weary of other people and would never do something as reprimand someone else's child. They'd rather openly shout at us, even when we were not at fault. Later they'd explain that you have no authority over others and should look only at your own. I found it really unfair as a child, but ultimately made me a better person." Yes, this is Bacon answered with, "In high school, I was suspended for letting out a little toot." Noodle Boys in America followed up with, "Get him. He did a bodily function, the sick F." MyJazzy007 chimed in with, "While Op describes it as a little toot, it could have been an hour-long symphony for all we know." Ender4171 chimed in with, "Lol, this reminds me of my grandma. She used to unrepentantly fart wherever/whenever the need struck. Could be in church, in the middle of Christmas dinner, while talking to a cashier, whenever. Every time she'd just go brr it, and then a deadpan it's a bodily function and go about her day like nothing had occurred. Lol. Miss you Grandma Gloria." All Gone Pete Tong. Meeting between angry parent and school principal. "Listen, you jumped up little Hitler, I don't know how yours works, but in our house, our butts obey the laws of physics." And finally, Pink Flying Pigs followed up with, "I have a similar story but different ending. When I was about 16 I went to a Marlies game, hockey, with my dad. I was sitting in the sidelines where there is no netting over the boards. A puck flew out from the ice and hit me right in the face. Remember, though it's made of rubber they freeze them overnight before the game so it's hard as a rock. I was in a semi-shocked state so it took me a second to get my bearings. As soon as I did, I realized someone behind me was diving for the puck. I wasn't going to let it go after getting hit in the face by it. He and I grabbed it at the same time and there was a little tug of war over it. Then, I stopped. Looked at him. And said, 'Really?' In the most what is a grown man doing fighting over a puck against a child look. He looked at his friends, then me, had a moment of reflection and immediately let go. I still have the puck to this day." Edit, from the comments I'm getting. It seems loads of people get hit by pucks all the time, eh? Well, there you have it. A perfectly great question answered by a bunch of fine and honorable citizens. Help support this channel by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. And hit that silly little bell as well to ensure you get the latest videos as they come out. Fred is always finding stuff for me to post regularly. So this is Derek signing off, thanks for watching. Good grief, it sounds like Fred is out of his pen again. I think he found more drama for me to share with you. See you soon.